everyone who is joining this diploma webinar. I'm here with my colleague, Tim Powers. Tim, how many people do we have so far?
We had 4 or 5 waiting. It looks like they're just starting to join in now. So they're in the waiting room and now they're actively joining onto the webinar.
Okay. Excellent. So we'll wait a couple of seconds to let people join. I hope everyone's having a good weekend who's joining. If you're on the West Coast in the Bay Area, it's very smoggy today. We have bad air quality, which is really weird because there's not any major fire that I know of. And on the East Coast, it's just cold.
A little bit of snow last night here in Boston, but nothing that we can't handle.
This is what's great about Commonwealth Wine School and Grape Experience, and our partnership is that we are on both coasts and can simultaneously do things with a whole range of instructors. We're getting more people joining, or how are we doing?
Yep, we're doing well, and I'm just connecting it to our YouTube.
Maddie, it's good to know you're on. It was great to be at Stanford earlier this week, talking to the Wine Society there. It was nice to see Caleb as well. It was my pleasure, Maddie. I'd love to come back. We've got a few people coming in. As we're waiting, I'll let you all know that the next opportunity to start diploma will be in January. And it's coming up quickly. And it's the kind of thing where the turn of the new year often makes people forget about the deadlines because it feels like January is a long way away. And yet it's less than a month away now, of course. So if you're interested in the January date, we've got that. And we'll also have dates in the spring that you can join. Unfortunately, Diploma's calendar is really controlled by the WSET in the UK. So you have to start at one of the entry dates for a diploma, all of which are posted on either grapeexperience.com or commonwealthwineschool.com. And Tim, why don't you give me the signal when you think it's a good time to start? But
Absolutely.
wait a few more seconds, I guess, to see if some more people are coming through.
For sure.
Diploma is really confusing, as you're going to see, but this will be posted to YouTube. And of course, we're always available for questions, but we're going to go over it, all of its components. It's a great program. It's something that I think anyone who goes through Diploma comes out, regardless of whether they're working in wine, feeling like they had an amazing experience. And they also have a sense of having something that not many people around the world have. And when you travel to any wine region, even if you're not going for a wine purpose, having Diploma and using it to contact a winery in advance and say, I'd love to come by and visit. Usually it's something that the wineries know about, and they let you in and usually treat you royally.
Well, on that note, I think it's a perfect time. We've given it a few minutes for people to join in. I think it's a perfect time to get started, Adam.
Fantastic. Well, hey, everyone. Again, welcome to this diploma webinar. We're glad to have you. This is a chance for you to really get a sense of how the diploma program works. And in the next however many minutes that we have, Tim and I are going to go over diploma, the WSET diploma program, which is probably the top thing that you can get in the wine world that is run by an educational organization. After this, you get to Master of Wine, Master Sommelier. I know for Master of Wine, diploma is a prerequisite. Those are associations. They're run by clubs. So when we talk about an educational organization, I don't know if everyone thinks of the WSET as that, but it really is. It's as if you were going to a vocational education program for any other subject, whether it would be finance or accounting or anything else. That's what we're talking about here. Of course, you don't have to be working in wine to do diploma, and several of our diploma students are doing it really either because they're interested in wine just personally, or they want to give themselves the option someday of maybe entering wine or spirits or the alcoholic beverages industry in some field. Even though diploma is just wine, it certainly has resonance across all categories. So why don't we start the presentation, and Tim, if you would put the first slides up, and I'll take you through the beginning.
Right.
So this is our overview of diploma. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how diploma works, just from a structural perspective, what it is. And then we're going to go into how we are different at Grape Experience and Commonwealth Wine School, because we've built some things that you won't get at every diploma provider. I think one of the things that confuses people is, isn't every provider just doing the same thing from WSET? And although we are all connected to WSET in that we've been approved to offer these programs, we each sort of float on our own boat. We have our own programs that we run, and Grape Experience and Commonwealth Wine School have joined together to give you really the most robust program we think that's out there, with lots of ways to learn and lots of ways to study. But before we do that, let's just talk about what diploma is. So Tim, if you would move to the next slide. So diploma is a course that actually has 5 mini courses plus a research paper. So it's not necessarily one course that you sign up for all at once. There are a number of courses that make up diploma. Some are bigger than others. And you start with foundation units. Now, each of these sub-courses and the paper that you do are labeled units by WSET with a D in front for diploma, and then each unit is numbered. Now, diploma is one of the WSET levels, and I think it's just a good idea for people who don't understand how British education works to understand what levels are. Levels in British education, yes, they are progressive in some ways, but not in every way. So the level means what the job would be in terms of vocational education, what the nature of the job would be for this curriculum. So for diploma, the level 4 would equate to a management job. It would be essentially something just above a bachelor's degree in the US, even though it's not nearly as long or complex as a bachelor's degree would be in the US, but that's the kind of work you would have, and that's the kind of depth they're going into. So for diploma, we're talking about a program that looks not just at what wine is, hopefully you know that by the time you get to diploma, but really looks at what's going on in wine production, not just still wine, sparkling wine and fortified wine as well, across the major production regions. And what are the trends? And some of those trends are business related. Some of those trends are science related, new technologies, such as regenerative viticulture or organics or biodynamics. Others are market dynamics, things like sweet wine not being quite the demand that it used to have. So what is someone who's making sweet wines like Sauterne or Tokai doing, or port, if you want to go to fortified wines, or sherry, what are they doing given changing businesses? So when you come out of diploma, you really have not just a core understanding of what's going on, but what the drivers are in today's wine business. So we start with 2 foundation units. They have no wine tasting on their exams. These are the units that called foundation because they actually are used in all of the other diploma units, the other diploma mini courses. So really what you're doing here is you're learning about the production of wine today and the business of wine today. And you have to sit both of these units. It should be D1 wine production, and on your slide here, it's D2 wine business. These 2 units really are the units that you start with. Now, when you take these units, there is no wine tasting on the exam. The exam is an essay exam. So you take these units, they're each about 6 weeks in length, and then you've got some time between the end of the unit and the exam. And the first one, D1, covers both viticulture and winemaking, trends in both, business issues in both. Where is the cost to be a winemaker? Where is the cost of a vineyard? And what is the style of wine that your vineyard or your winery is trying to make? Is it a big bulk wine like a Yellowtail or a Gallo, where you're making millions of volumes of liters? Or is it a very high-end small lot wine? And what are the things that you do in both cases, both on the production, the viticulture side, the winemaking side, and on the business side? For D1, the wine production section, you've got a 90-minute exam, all essay questions, 4 to 5 questions. Some might be just a paragraph. Others might be a bit more of a longer essay. For D2, wine business, we're looking at, first of all, multiple global business models. And we also teach you the basics that you would learn in any business course, the 5 Ps of marketing, for example, what a brand is, how to price. And then you've got a 60-minute theory exam with 3 to 4 questions of varying length. When you take these courses, either in person or online, we also add some Zoom sessions. And the Zoom sessions go over how to be really successful in diploma in a theory exam, but they also give you a primer on how to taste at the diploma level. So even though there's no tasting on these exams, you're in the wine course. You're thinking, I want to taste wine and I want to be ready to taste wine for an exam. So we start you out right away thinking about how is this level different in terms of what's required on the tasting exam versus level 3. So we talk about that and we give you plenty of options to have a Zoom session where we actually go through it. You can watch the Zoom session if you miss it. We give you videos. We give you lots of different links that help you do well. So these are the 2 foundation units. Let's move on to the units that are about actual wine regions and winemaking. So D3, some of you who know a little bit about diploma know that of the product knowledge units, that would be light wines like things that aren't fortified or not sparkling, fortified wines and sparkling wines, that D3 is the biggest unit. And if you think about this unit, those of you who've taken level 3, and I'm assuming many of you have, this is a unit that takes level 3 to the next degree. We don't do in D3 anything that's fortified or anything that's sparkling. So we're really focused on the still wines, the non-fortified wines of the world. And we are going into in depth in every major global wine producing region, including regions that you might not have spent much time on when you did level 3. So for example, we spend a lot more time on Greece and Austria than we would in level 3. We spend a lot more time on Chile, Argentina, South Africa, New Zealand, not to mention the US, Canada, and Australia. So this is a long course, and we look at essentially how climate is changing things, meaning what's going on in the natural factors, what choices people make in terms of those changes and what they're trying to produce, and where the market is, where the demand is, what are the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats of either a country or a wine region here. So you really get in depth into what's going on and really having to understand how winemaking choices will affect price and will affect demand. And then, of course, we talk about trends in individual markets. So for example, some of you may have read about how climate in the last couple of years has really thrown Spain and Italy for a loop. What do I mean by that? Well, Italy, it's not been that it's just been hotter. That's not been the issue there. The issue there is that weather patterns have changed. They're getting a lot more storms during the growing season. And if you're an Italian winemaker or certainly a vineyard owner, how do you deal with that? This is something that's new. Spain, drought has been a huge issue. something they've always had to deal with, but much more severe than ever before. So this is a long course because we're going over every single major wine region. It runs over 6 months, and then you've got a 2-day exam. The first exam is a theory exam where you come in and you have a choice of 4 theory questions. You have to write on 3 of them. You have about 40 minutes. You can arrange the time any way you want, but you've got 40 minutes for each question, totals 2 hours. Then you break for lunch, and you come back, and there are 3 more options, and there's 2 questions to write on, so you've got another 80 minutes. Day 2, you come back. You can see this is a big exam, and you've got 3 sections. The first is a tasting section of 90 minutes, 6 wines. 1 wine grouping of 3 will be from the same grape variety. Second grouping will be from the same country. Then you'll have a break for lunch. And then the third part is yet another 6 wines. And that will be from 1 region within a country. And then 3 will be from just a mixed bag. So it's a lot of tasting, but you've got a lot of time to do it. And we give you ample time. This is the one exam that works kind of like level 3 did, in that you can pass the tasting and not the theory, and get credit for the theory, get credit for the tasting and not have to take it again. Or you pass the theory and not the tasting, and you get credit for the theory and don't have to take that again. Hopefully you pass both parts, but it does give you the option, if you fail one, you only have to retake the part that you have failed. Let's move on to D4. So D4 is sparkling wines, and this is sparkling wines from around the world, the different types of sparkling wines. We add here something that you didn't really focus on in level 3, which are sort of method ancestral wines, more natural sparkling wines. And then D5 is 4 of the 5 wines. And these exams are the same. It's a 90-minute exam. Tasting and theory, you can use the 90 minutes any way you want. We suggest 45 minutes for each. You have 3 blind wines, 3 to 4 theory questions, and you have to get 55% of all the points in both sections to pass the exam. So some people will actually take a D4 exam and they will not pass tasting, but they will pass theory, or vice versa, and yet they will pass the exam. And then some people will pass tasting and not pass theory, and they'll fail the exam. So if you think about it just from a simple perspective, if there are 33 and the third points between the 3 blind wines, and let's say there's 3 theory questions, so that's 33 and the third points between each of those, 100 points each, 200 points on the exam. You need 55% of those points, or about 110 points to pass. Don't worry about the math. It's more just about how this exam works. So if you get your exam back and it says you passed tasting but failed theory on D4 or D5, and you have a fail on the exam, overall, you retake the whole exam. This is a great unit, both D4 and D5, because it really gives you a chance to go into much more depth than you did in D3, in level 3, on sparkling and 4 to 5 wines, not just from understanding what they are, but understanding how they are changing, particularly with fortified wines, which is a category of wines that's really been under assault in the sense that demand has dropped. So it's a really interesting unit, particularly if you love either of these types of wines, but you just learn a ton. Let's go on to the next slide, Tim. So the final part of diploma, which you can do at any time during your diploma program, and you have 3 years to complete diploma, although you can get an extension if you need more time for a fee. But the final part is a research paper, and it's a 3,000-word paper. You have a choice of topic every year. So every August, WSET will put on a website that's just for diploma students one of 2 topics. One topic will be due in January. The other topic will be due the following July. And you can choose either topic, whichever you're interested in, or you can say, I don't like either of these topics. I'm going to wait. I'll wait till next year's topics are introduced, and I'll do one of those. You just have to pass a research paper on one topic that they've assigned at some point during diploma. And the topics can range. Sometimes they're on a region. Right now, there's a topic out there on Virginia. Sometimes they're on a specific wine type, like low alcohol wines. Other times they might be on something scientific, like various clones to do various things in the wine industry. So a real chance for you to delve into something that you might like. And it's not a paper that you write blindly. They tell you exactly what they're looking for and where the points are to pass that paper. Let's go on to the next slide. So before I turn it over to Tim to talk to you about some of the things that we've got, that we offer, you might be thinking, oh my God, you have told me just so much. I'm overwhelmed. I don't think I can do this. It's impossible. How am I ever going to find time? Well, here's the deal. You can do it. You have to want to do it. You have to want to make the time to do it. But diploma is more of a seminar than level 3 or level 2 was. Meaning with diploma, you're given a digital textbook. There's only digital textbooks from WSET. They're constantly updated every year. You can use that textbook to find links to more information. So essentially, you can, as long as you're within the timeframes that we're talking about for each unit, you can find your own way to plan your time and take ownership of your own learning. You do need to plan your time. You do need to study. And one of the great things about diploma that we tell people this in level 3 as well, is teach other people. It's a really good opportunity to bring people to your house, whether it's your family, your friends, your colleagues, and have wine events where you're telling them what you're learning, because that's the way you're going to really learn this stuff. And it's going to be more fun. We also say use non-traditional study opportunities. These days, pretty much every state in America has a winery somewhere. Go to it. Call them in advance. Call wineries from Australia or New Zealand, or if you've ever thought of taking that trip to Tuscany or to Piedmont or to the Valpolicella region, great way to go see Venice, stop in Valpolicella first. Go and use this as an opportunity. We also say to keep a structured notebook. And that is a way of just having notes that you can go back to and say, okay, I wasn't sure about this concept when I read about it. Now I'm 2 weeks before the exam and look at my notebook. Oh yeah, I want to go back. The great thing about the digital textbooks is you can search. The other thing I would say is help each other. When you join Grape Experience or Commonwealth Wine School's diploma cohort, you are part of a large cohort of people, and you can network with each other. You can study online together or in person, and helping each other is a great way to not only do well in diploma, but to make contacts for a lifetime. So that's where I'd like to stop before turning it over to Tim. I think before we begin, Tim, to talk about the different things that we have, are there any questions just on the core diploma program that have come up?
And on that note, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the webinar chat. We are monitoring that, just so that if you have any questions, you can send them in and we'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
We know there's a lot of information here, and all of it is also listed on both Grape Experience and Commonwealth Wine School's website. But if there aren't questions now, we can take them. Oh, okay. Thanks, Caleb. What is the question? Tim, can you read me that question?
Absolutely. Roughly how much time is usually spent on D4 and D5? If D3 is a little over 6 months, how long is a D4 or a D5 course?
Yeah, they're essentially 6 weeks of online learning. And usually you've got 2.5 months before the exam. So we don't end the course and then take the exam right away. So for example, if you were to start D4 in March, your exam would be in June. So you'd start the end of March, you'd go through the middle of May with your online course, and then you would have your exam in June. If you start with Grape Experience and move to a different country, yes, you can transfer. I want to just say real quickly about that. If you have paid Grape Experience, or if you have paid Commonwealth Wine School for the course, we cannot transfer that money to another center. So you need to think, okay, I'm going to, I don't know, move to London in the fall. you don't want to start something with us that will have a fall exam. But that's something we can work with you on. There's lots of options there to be flexible, so don't worry too much about that.
All right, and then I think we had one question in the Q&A that I'm just going to have to stop sharing for a second to access. All right, what is the class slash seminar structure for the D3, D4, D5 in-person classes versus the online self-study classes?
Yeah, so there's a few things to note there, and Tim's going to go over how the study support works. But when you take an online course with us, you get WSET's online classroom. We also give you access to every single lecture from D4, D5, D3, whichever it is. We also do this for D2 and D1. It's with me. They're taped. They're taped lectures, not of a classroom. So you're not getting a grainy classroom lecture. You're getting an actual customized for the web lecture, which you can stop and start at any time. That's the online only. Now, when you take the in-person classes meet on weekends because we have a lot of diploma students who travel from other places. So our in-person classes for D5, for example, would meet on one weekend. You'd have one weekend, you'd come probably 10 to 4:30, Saturday and Sunday. And then you'd have plenty of time before the exam to also do the online classroom and to access our study support. For D3, it's 5 weekends because it's such a big class. And we don't make you do them consecutively. So it's not like you've got to be 5 weekends in San Francisco or 5 weekends in Cambridge. You would come one weekend a month over 5 months. And that course, as you know, is 6 months, 6.5. So you'd have some time in between them. And the weekends go 9 to 5. And if you are really at a great distance, you can't come to every weekend, we can work with you. You can say, oh, I really can only make 3 of these weekends. We'll work with you on that. Flexibility is what we try and do.
Absolutely. Well, and on that note too, if you are registered for example, the D3 online only class, and you are able or you're going to be in town for one of the in-person weekends, you are able to register for individual weekend sessions. So, again, like Adam was saying, if you've been planning your trip to Boston or to San Francisco, it might be worth your while to see if it can have, part of that weekend, part of that trip be on an in-person weekend, so you can pop in and join us for a class.
Yeah. Again, we try and be as flexible as possible. We know WSET sometimes isn't flexible, so we try and do everything on our end to make our program as flexible as possible to make it work for you and for you to be successful. Obviously, we have some limited control. This is a program that WSET controls much stronger than they do their other programs, and they do that because it's such a special program for them.
Absolutely. All right, now I'm going to reshare the slides and I will take over talking about a little bit what we were just discussing, but the differences between the online and the in-person and online combination course options. So I think the best way to think of it is the online course option will be there whether you're registered for the online or the in-person and online combo option. The combo option is kind of a, icing on top of the cake that will already exist, or an additional tier of a cake on that initial tier of cake. So with that, both options, the online and the combo, are going to include access to the WSET online classroom. Now, if you've taken any WSET online classes in the past, you will have already become familiar with this WSET online classroom. And it is really, really wonderful in that you are connected with diploma candidates from around the world as you're all going through this journey together. And most importantly, it includes WSET feedback exams. So these are really fantastic opportunities where it is a virtual mock exam for whichever diploma unit you're currently enrolled in. And so you're able to, effectively do a practice run of your final exam that's then sent to an instructor at WSET proper for them to grade and give you very detailed, specific feedback on your performance. So it's a great way to check in not only on, have you been following the information? What is your information retention looking like? but also, especially if you're transitioning from level 3 into diploma for the first time, how are you finding this essay question exam style as opposed to the more short answer style of level 3? So we very much do we very much do encourage our students to take advantage of these WSET feedback exams because they're just a really, really fantastic opportunity, regardless of if you're in D1, D2, D3, D4, or D5. Now, in addition to the WSET online classroom, we at Commonwealth Wine School and Grape Experience have actually built our own proprietary online learning platform. And I'll cover a little bit about what that includes with my next slide. But it's really quite a lot, and it's a fantastic, fantastic resource for our students. In addition, you have access to our diploma educators where you can reach out with questions. So, if you're going through your studies and something isn't clear, you're more than welcome to email us and we will find an answer for you and get back to you on that. And then if you're looking to do the in-person and online combination class option, that includes everything that we just discussed, and in addition, these in-person class sessions, as Adam was talking about before I took over. They're really fantastic in-person sessions to work through guided tasting practice and additional mock exams. Additionally, the diploma in-person classes are very much structured around group participation and working together as a team to come up with answers to these larger questions so that you have experience of not only building your own critical thinking skills, but working with other people who might approach these questions differently and getting to see their point of view. Because ultimately, when you're sitting for the exam, WSET expects you to not only know the information, but be able to analyze that information to draw nuanced conclusions. And so that is something that it does take practice, but that we really have worked to provide as many practice opportunities for that as possible. In addition, on the tasting practice note, there, especially for fortified wines, D5, there are quite a few examples that can be difficult to source or locate depending on where you're located and what your local alcohol laws are. And so it's a great opportunity if you are feeling nervous about tracking down that fortified muscat, or if your local wine shop just doesn't have a Muscat de Baume de Vigny. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to taste all of these lesser available wines in one concentrated session. Adam, did you have anything on this to add before I move on?
No, I think, this idea of having the online and the in-person is something that we started about 10 years ago. And it became very, very popular because one of the things that the online classroom, the WSET online classroom gives you is a weekly study plan, if you will. So when you take the online every week, for those of you who've never taken an online class with WSET, where it's run from WSET in London, every week starts on Monday and it ends the following Sunday. And there's a tutor. There's no video. All the video comes from us, but on the online platform, there is a very well-developed system where a tutor assigns you reading and tasting and theory exercises each week. And you have that week to do them to get feedback from the tutor on what you decide to submit. Nothing you do online counts towards your grade. It's all practice. So one of the beauties of the online system is that every week you're getting a different element to study of each diploma unit. This is really good for people who like that structure. If you don't like the structure, you're not wedded to do the online course. I mean, you will have it, but if you say, I'm not going to do this part of the course, or I'm not going to check in this week, that's up to you. It's not going to count against you.
Absolutely. All right. So here we go. As we were talking about the online learning platform that we have built, our own proprietary online learning platform, remember that this is included for all of our diploma candidates, whether you're online only or doing the combo, the in-person and online course option. And so on this online learning platform, we're going to have recorded lectures, basically recordings of an educator, an instructor going through each of these sessions, each of these chapters. But it's not as if they're teaching a live class and you have to listen and hear all of the different distracting sounds and poor audio quality. These have been recorded just for the online learning platform. So they're very clear, they're very concise, and they contain all of the information that you need in a recorded lecture format. So if you're someone who really likes that auditory learning style, this is going to be right up your alley. Now, it does also include live webinar sessions through Zoom, similar to what we're doing here today. And this is a great opportunity for students to have a face-to-face interaction with the instructor and ask any questions that might have come up or things that are not entirely clear to them. Or some students learn best through a conversational style format. And so this is another opportunity that we're trying to make these materials as accessible as possible to all of our students. Additionally, there are assignments similar to the WSET online classroom that you can submit to get feedback from our instructors. And we also are building flashcard decks. So similar, I don't know if any of you have worked with Brainscape or other wine knowledge companies or corporations out there, but decks of flashcards so you can help work on that immediate recall, which I especially have found very helpful when sitting for WSET exams. And it also includes review quizzes for each of these sessions. So once you've gone through all of the recorded lectures, you've read the textbook, you've looked through the flashcard decks, you've done the assignments, then you can do review quizzes and get immediate feedback on your performance and again on your knowledge retention for that session. Finally, there are additional resources, study resources, wine maps, other videos, and discounts that we have partnered with other companies from around the world in the world of wine to provide discounts for all of our diploma candidates. And once a student has enrolled in this course or in any of our course options, they do have access to our own online learning platform for that specific course for 1 year from the end of their original course date. So say something comes up and you need to defer your exam to a later date, or goodness forbid, you have to retake an exam, you'll still have access to these materials so that you can go back and brush up, restudy, or just have access to more information during your revision. So it's a really, really wonderful online learning platform that we've built. And definitely my hat's off to Adam because I know a lot of those recorded lectures are from him. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. It's one of the things we do in the recorded lectures is not just tell you the material as if you were sitting in a big lecture hall, but we try and say, so why is this important? What should you be thinking about here? And we've really taken the time to do that to help you think about why they're even presenting you with this material. Why does WSET care about this? And I think it's something that we do very well at both Grape Experience and Commonwealth Wine School. Some of you may have seen that from the level 3 lectures that you saw online. And I think it's a real benefit.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Right. Now, speaking of diploma exams and potentially needing to defer, the diploma exam dates, as Adam mentioned towards the beginning of this webinar, are set by WSET, and we are mandated to follow those exam dates, pardon. So unfortunately, while we try and strive to be as flexible and accommodating to our students in every other part of this diploma journey, this is one that we truly do not have any control over. So as you can see here, the diploma exams are held in specific months at specific times. And what is positive is that they will be held on the same month each year. So in January, we have D2, D4, D5, and D6 exams, typically on about the third week, the Wednesday of the third week of January. I believe it's January 22nd of 2025 is the upcoming January exam dates. And then in March, we have the D1 exam retake option, as well as D2, D4, and D5.
Actually, there is no D4 and D5 in March. It's just D1 and D2.
You're right. I apologize. So in March, it is just D1 and D2, and that's on the first Wednesday of the month, typically. In May, we have the D3, the 2-day exam there, and that's typically on the second or third Tuesday and Wednesday of May. So I believe it's the 14th and 15th of 2025 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
In June, we have D2, D4, and D5, and that one I know we've got D4 and D5 on. And that's typically around, again, the second week of June. July, we have the second D6 paper topic is due at the end of the month. And in October, we have another D1 retake option, and then D2, D3, D4, and D5. So this is typically towards the end of the month, and is quite a busy week for us holding those exams.
So Tim, let me just clarify, because I think people are seeing all these numbers. What does it mean? If you
Mhm.
start the D1 and D2 course, which I said are sold together, you can buy them separately, but they're sold together generally in January. You would have a D1 exam in March, on March 5th. You would then have a D2 exam in June. The next unit you took, which would likely be D4 or D5, your exam would be in October. So you don't have exams 6 times a year. I just want to make that clear. When you sign up for a unit, we expect that if you're signing up for D1 starting January 6th, that you're going to take the D1 exam on March 5th. If you don't want to take the exam on that date, and we encourage you to do so because it can throw off your rest of your schedule, there are other options, and that's what Tim has shown here. The one thing you should know is that these exams are on weekday afternoons. The WSET mandates that. We've had people say, oh, I really want to take that exam, but I can't do it until 6 o'clock at night. We sympathize. We just can't give it to you at 6 o'clock at night. So it's just something to think about. But what would you say, Tim? It's maybe 2 to 3 weekdays a year at most that you're sitting an exam and diploma. So it's not like
Absolutely.
you're got lots of weekdays where you've got to be out of work.
Well, and as a note on that, the D6 paper is just due as a hard copy paper that you can mail to us. So really, in terms of in-person exam dates, we are only looking at 5. All right, when we do have a question, Adam,
Yeah.
when is the first opportunity to do the D1 and D2 course and exam for people who are still currently waiting to get their level 3 results?
So here's the thing, Angela. It depends on when you took your level 3 exam. Generally, they are trying to get exam results back to people within 10 weeks. So if you did not have your exam by the end of December, if you don't have your exam result back for level 3 by then, if you get it in January after the D1 has started, the next opportunity, I believe, Tim, is April to start
Yes,
D1.
I believe so.
So I wish we could make that a little different. If you feel like you absolutely know you have passed your level 3 exam, but you don't have the result, contact us. We can talk to you about potentially some transitional options. But again, it's a little of it's out of our control. We've had people call us and say, such and such provider says they're not offering D1 in February. Are you? And I wish we could. If you took D1, the D1 exam, if you start in April, would be June 11th, I believe, or June 12th. But we also will do a second D1 in the summer. We're able to do D1 a few times a year on our own schedule. So if you start in April, your D1 exam would be in June, and your D2 exam would be in October. We would suggest probably thinking about writing the paper potentially between exams, or you could do 2 exams in October with D2. So there's all sorts of permutations here, but if you start in April, your first exam would be in June, on that June date. And we don't have D1 up there for June either, but there is a D1 exam in June.
Oh, I can add that. And yeah, I was just counting through my calendar. I would say if your level 3 exam was after October, I would be doubtful that you'd get your results before this upcoming deadline, unfortunately. And depending on when in October and how quickly the results came back, that one would be it might be a little close, unfortunately.
I think it's a good opportunity to talk about why these exams take so long to come back, particularly for diploma and D3 and level 3. They are hand graded, and WSET has, my understanding, although they don't tell us a lot, is a rostrum of freelance examiners. And so they try and do their best to understand when the volumes are coming in, but they want to make sure that the exams, particularly the exams that have essays, are graded thoroughly. And they're usually graded twice. So there's an initial examiner that grades the exam, and then some of those exams are then re-looked at by a second examiner to make sure that there's consistency. So it does take a while. We wish it would take shorter. I will say they are trying to reduce the times, but it can be very frustrating. One of the things we say is after you've taken the exam, put it out of your mind for a few weeks, because otherwise it just becomes, stressful. What did I do well? Did I not do well?
For sure. Well, and I think that's a perfect segue that, as you said, results are returned to us about 10 weeks after the exam in question. But keep in mind, because, as I said, we don't have any flexibility with these diploma exam dates. No one else does either. So these diploma exams are being held on the same day around the world. And I can't imagine the number of papers that come in for those poor graders to have to work through. But no, again, that's, I think, something that we've discussed with WSET, and we of course want to see quicker exam results as well, but it'll unfortunately take some time, I think.
Yeah, I think they do as well. I think they're just trying to figure out how they do that. Remember, they are part of the British educational system, so they are evaluated by a government body in the UK, and they have to obey their rules, and that can create a little bit of stress for people who aren't in the UK and don't quite understand them.
For sure. Well, on that happy note, we will move on to our wonderful diploma instructors. So this is a mix of Commonwealth Wine School and Grape Experience instructors. And you can read more about them on our respective websites. We've got wonderful bios for all of them. But this is just to give you an idea of the wide range of individuals who'll be able to help guide you through this diploma program. All of them obviously have completed the diploma themselves, so they know what you're going through. They've been through it as well. And they also have worked in all facets of the beverage industry. We have people who have worked in retail, in production, in distribution, in importation, in marketing. And so I think it offers quite a diverse background that allows us to offer a really wide range of instruction. So, and not only have they worked in the beverage industry, they've also now been teaching with us for all of them quite a few number of years. And so they've been able to hone their pedagogical skills as well as all of their experience in the beverage industry.
And one of the things, there's no names under these people, although you may recognize some of them. Mark Davidson is here, Lucia Volk. There's Erica Fry, of course. These are people who are good teachers. Some of them are MWs. There's a few on this page, a couple on this page, and some of them are not. And you will hear other organizations may say, we have 21 MWs teaching or something like that. That's great. They may be good teachers, they may not. Not every MW is a good teacher. We select good teachers. That's our goal for diploma, people who help you succeed.
Exactly. All right, now we have some additional resources. Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about our newsletters that we send
Sure,
out?
we have a monthly newsletter, which will have dates and reminders, but it'll also have study tips. If we see a good article, and we encourage you to, in Diploma, to subscribe to a wine newsfeed. There are plenty, we can help you find one, but we also find really interesting articles as well and put them on there. We'll connect you to diploma graduates who are doing unique things. And pretty much it's a way of creating a community. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Well, and on that note too, it does include reminders and announcements for upcoming courses and upcoming exam dates and registration deadlines, just because, we always like to say diploma is hard enough just to learn the material and pass the exams. So we want to make the administrative side of things as straightforward and clear as possible. Because again, you've got enough to think about. So we try and send you this monthly reminder just of, hey, here's what's coming up. Here's here are some things to keep in mind. Here are some deadlines, just to make sure that you're able to stay on track and, progress through this 6-unit program. All right. And then another resource that we offer to our diploma students is this exam prep online review session. So these are monthly sessions that are offered online via Zoom. And as you can see here, we've got our schedule for the next few months, and they alternate between tasting and theory, because ultimately you really do have to hone each of these skills in order to be successful in your diploma endeavors. So during this, we'll review sample exam questions. We'll work on the skills on how to format your responses to these exam questions, because as many of you may have seen with level 3, WSET can be very particular with the the interrogatives that they're using. And they're led by our core diploma education team of Adam, Erica Fry, and Jessica Scully, the CWS director. And they're only $25 per session. They run Sundays from 6 to 7 p.m. And because they're online via Zoom, you're able to log in and participate no matter where you're studying. And then finally, we do have some frequently asked questions that Adam and I have gotten over the years. But while we're going through these, I do want to ask you to put any questions that you might have in the chat, and we'll go through and answer those as well. So Adam, a question that we often get is, we've talked about all of these different units, the 6 different units of the diploma. How long does a student have to complete the diploma once they register?
So there's 2 answers to that question. You have 3 years for free to complete diploma. The program itself is essentially 18 to 20-month program if you did everything in order, but you've got 3 years to do it. Now, after 3 years, there are people who pause diploma, who stop it in the middle, and then come back sometimes 5, 6 years later to regroup. If you do that, WSET will charge you a re-enrollment fee, but you do not lose any exam that you passed. If you passed D1 and 6 years later you decide you want to re-enter diploma and that's the only thing you've passed, you will not lose the pass in D1. That will stay with you. So essentially 3 years, but it can be as long as the program is up and running.
Absolutely. And I think you raise a good point about, sometimes life does happen. And if you need to defer an exam or, take a hiatus during your studies, it's so wonderful that WSET will ensure that your passes will forever exist in perpetuity. And I mean, WSET has been around for countless decades at this point. So I have faith that they'll be around for countless more. All right. Well, and Adam, you mentioned that it would take 18 to 20 months if you to complete your diploma if you're going in order. Do you have to take all of your courses and exams in order?
No, and there's 2 things for this. One is if you pause, obviously, you're not going to be doing in the order. There's a couple of things. You have to take D1 and D2 first. You have to have sat them. Don't have to have passed them. Let's say you take the D1 exam, and you take the D2 exam and you failed. Maybe you fail D1. People say, can I go on to the next unit? Yes, you can. You just have to have sat the exam. They want to make sure you've read the material and sat the exam. You will have to eventually pass that exam on a retake, but you keep going. So do you have to take them in order? Meaning D1, D2, D3, D4, D5? No. D1 and D2 you do have to take in order, but then there is a choice. The choice is not only yours. The choice has to do with what time of the year you start diploma. So let me give you an example. If you start diploma in January, this January, as we said, you would take D1, the exam, on March 5th. You would take D2 on June 2nd. You would then likely take D5 for the 5 wines in October. You would then go on to D3, October to May, finish that, and then D4 as your final exam. If you were to start the exam in August, start diploma in August, you would have D1 in October, D2 in January, and then you would do D5 and D4, and then D3. So not to be too confusing, but because these exams have, particularly D3, D4, and D5 have tasting, we have to have a sizable group. We can't just give you a single exam. So we try and create a schedule around the calendar that Tim created. So we'll have people who will start with D1, then they'll do D2, and then technically the next exam for them would be D3, the next course. And they'll say, I don't want to do D3 next, I want to do D4. Well, you can't necessarily take D4 immediately, but you could certainly put off D3 and take D4 when it's offered. That may be confusing to people. We're happy to work with you. Because diploma has so many complex moving parts, if you have questions on this, you're like, I don't want to do this then, how would I do this? We will work with you. We will, to the extent that we can, we will be as flexible as possible. So if you're nervous, oh, I want to do this, but it's too constricting, contact us. Let's talk through it together, because if you're interested, it's a great program and it's worth figuring out if there's a way to make it work for you.
Absolutely. Well, and in terms of course order as well, I know there's two main schools of thought where, once you take D1 and D2 that have to come first, do you dive into the largest chunk, D3, and take on the biggest, baddest course first, or do you do the D4 and D5 to, build a little bit of confidence in your tasting before then going to D3? And I think there are absolutely great positives and negatives for both of these paths. But it ultimately will have to come down to, the WSET diploma calendar, and as Adam said, when you started in with it, and your own calendar. So it is as rigid as it is. We are here, to Adam's point again, we are here to make sure that we can help you fit it into your own life and your own schedule as well. So, and I know Commonwealth Wine School has been offering the diploma now for 3 years, but Grape Experience previously had been offering it for
Almost
10,
20.
20? Wow.
Yeah,
That's
we've
incredible.
seen it come in multiple iterations. If you need to retake or defer one of the exams, you only pay for the exam costs. Now, they're not cheap, but you don't pay for the whole course again. If you need to defer an exam, and let me talk a little bit about enrollment. So as I mentioned, when you sign up for diploma, when you sign up for the D1 course, we're going to register you for the exam that follows that course. If you sign up for D3, we're going to register you for the exam that follows that D3 course. If you need to get out of that exam, we give you lots of notices. This is the last date you can get out. Here's the deal. But for any exam that has wine, D3, D4, and D5, there is essentially a 10 to 12 week lead time that you have to say, yep, I'm going into that exam as planned, or I'm not. And if you are within that 10 to 12 week lead time, if you decide you do not want to sit the exam and the deadline to get out is passed, WSET will charge you a fail. The only recourse is if you're sick and get a doctor's note, or if something legal has happened, jury duty or something in that realm, you can ask for a deferral, and they're usually very, very reasonable about it. The reason the lead times are so long is because the wines, at least at this point, for all those exams, are shipped from the UK to each diploma center, whether it's in Sydney, Australia, Rome, Italy, or San Francisco or Cambridge. We're all getting the same wines. So if you need to retake or defer one of the exams, you can do so. We give you plenty of notice. We'll tell you when the next exam is, and you can definitely do so. Prerequisites for diploma, level 3 is really the prerequisite. It's very hard to get out of having passed level 3 and get into diploma. I don't know anyone who's done it. And then what's included with diploma, I think, Tim, you've talked about that. You do get the digital books, the very basic. You get access to all of WSET's digital books, which are updated every August. You get access to a wealth of WSET study support material and all of our study support material as well.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it is a very challenging and involved process to go through and achieve the WSET diploma. But I think all of our students who have gone through it and completed it have also found it incredibly rewarding. And not only the information learned, but the connections made during their studies has lasted with them for their lives. So I do think it's a fantastic program.
I agree with you. There was a question about pass rates that I see that just came up. And let me just see if I can find something that will, because they don't publish this in one big thing, if you will, Caleb. But let me give you a sense. And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, please, guys, I may be off on this. So I will say that D1 and D2, the pass rates are somewhere in the 80 to 90% range. This is global. D3 tasting is I want to say in the 60 to 70% range, theory in the 50 to 60% range. Overall, people who pass both on the first try, somewhere in the 40 to 50% range. For D4 and D5, again, it's somewhere in the 60 to 70% range. So that's my best guess at this point. WSET doesn't publish this all in one place. They go year to year, exam to exam, and we get when they give us these rates for the exams, we're usually a year and a half past that exam. They're not good at keeping that very up to date, but it's a little lower than level 3, certainly. But different units, the units which have just theory, also D6, I would say, is in the 80 to 90% range as well, the paper. The units without tasting, they're just purely theory, again, that 80 to 90. And the units with tasting more in the 60 to 70% range, sometimes as high as 80%, depending on the exam.
And on that note about the tasting pass rates, something that's different in the diploma for D3, D4, and D5 than in level 3 is because all of the wines are coming from England and they're all the same wines around the world for the exam on the same day. WSET actually releases what those wines were a few days after the exam in question. So even if you are unfortunately unsuccessful on your first tasting attempt, you pretty immediately are able to have that feedback and see, okay, if I failed this portion or failed, you're able to see what might have happened with your exam attempt. So that's always a bit of an added bonus that I like to point out, because I remember for my level 3 exams, it drove me crazy that I never knew what the tasting samples were.
I will say this, there are people who will, and we just gave a D3 exam in October, and there are people who you see after the tasting exam have their heads hung down, they feel like they failed, even though they don't know what the wines are. And I have to tell you, you can get all the wines right, meaning you can guess all of the regions and all of the varietals and still fail, and you can get them all wrong and still pass. And we've actually seen that in both cases. One of the great things about tasting at WSET is there's lots of points for these tasting exams, And it's more about getting what's in the glass right than specifically identifying that this is Hoyak or Margot versus Pomerol.
Exactly. No, I completely agree.
Any other questions?
Going to stop my share as we wait and see if any other questions come in.
And you can always contact Tim or I. You have one of our emails based on who sent you the link to this. And if you're coming on, you're watching this and you never got a link, you can find us at either commonwealthwineschool.com or grapeexperience.com. And we answer questions within 24 hours, if not quicker than within 24 hours. And we really want you to be successful. That's our goal.
Absolutely. No, and this is truly our job, is to help you go through this process. So not only are we, more than happy to do it, but we enjoy doing it. It's what we do on a daily basis. So
The other thing I would say is, because some of you might say, well, I'm doing this, I'm not sure I can give it, 3 years or 2 years or whatever. We have had people who start diploma and for whatever reason, maybe don't finish it or, take the course and don't take the exam. Ideally, we want you to take the exam, we want you to finish. But many of those people have said, I'm stopping because I've gotten what I wanted out of it, but I'm really glad I did it because I've learned so much and I've made connections with other people in the industry that will last a lifetime. So I'll give you a funny example. I travel usually once a year to a wine region, and I'm heading to Australia, where I've been several times for work and for fun. And I contacted a winery that was doing a wine event with us in Cambridge. And I said, by the way, I'm going to be in Australia. I met one of your reps in Cambridge. And they said, oh, when are you going to be there? I told them the date. They said, please come. We're going to have lunch for you. We're going to show you all these. I mean, they really do. They see you, even if you're a diploma student, they see you as that buzzword these days, an influencer. And if you can help them sell wine, they love having you. And they see diploma students as people who are influencers. So I can't tell you how many times, just on a whim, I've called a winery, either locally or internationally, either to find out information or to visit. And 9 times out of 10, they are extremely welcoming and extremely helpful.
absolutely, there is a professional respect that's conferred for not only people who've completed the diploma, but for those who are going through the diploma, who are diploma candidates. I've seen that as well. It's wonderful that there is that worldwide respect in the beverage industry for not only WSET, but the diploma specifically. So yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile program. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we're getting any more questions, so I think we're going to sign off and leave it here. But again, as Adam said, please feel free to reach out via email. We're always more than happy to help. And thank you all so much for being here on a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Adam, thank you so much for joining as well. And do you have anything that you'd like to sign off on with?
No, just thanks everyone. And if you're thinking of doing this and you're not sure, contact us. We're happy to walk through it with you.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you once again. Have a great rest of your Sunday and yeah, enjoy. Bye.